Arjun had never been the type of person who attended big company events. He usually kept to himself, doing his work quietly, finishing tasks on time, and avoiding unnecessary conversations. So when he opened his email one ordinary afternoon and saw an invitation to the company's grand annual gala, he felt confused. At first, he thought it was a mistake. People like him, shy, unnoticed, and always sitting in the back corner of the office, were never invited to such high-profile events. Those gatherings were meant for managers, team leads, and the people who like to show off. He read the invitation again and again, wondering if someone else with the same name had been the real target. His hands felt cold and his heartbeat sped up a little. "Why me?" he whispered to himself. Even more strange was the fact that the invitation was sent personally, with his name written clearly and the CEO's office listed as the sender. Arjun had never spoken to the CEO in his 2 years at the company. She probably didn't even know he existed. As the news spread around the office, people began to look at him in unusual ways. Some stared with surprise, others with curiosity, and a few with mischievous smiles that made him uneasy. While walking through the hallway, he heard soft laughter coming from behind him, the kind of laughter people try to hide but fail to. His stomach tightened. Something felt wrong. During lunch, he sat alone as always, eating quickly with his head down. A group of coworkers sat at a nearby table. They were not speaking loudly, but Arjun could still hear bits of their conversation. "Did you hear?" They invited him. "Seriously? That's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see what happens." More laughter followed. Arjun bit his lip and stared at his plate. He didn't want to assume anything, but the way they were talking made him feel like he was walking into a trap. The gala had always been famous in the company. Everyone knew it was a glamorous night filled with fancy clothes, sparkling lights, expensive decorations, and speeches from top executives. People spent weeks preparing for it. But Arjun had never imagined himself being part of such an event. He didn't own fancy clothes, he didn't enjoy crowds, and he certainly didn't like being the center of attention. Even the idea of walking into a ballroom filled with powerful people made his palms sweat. Still, the invitation was official. Ignoring it felt impossible. He kept thinking, what if this is important? What if the CEO wants something from me? But then another voice in his mind whispered, or what if someone wants to embarrass you? What if it's a joke? His mind kept bouncing between worry and confusion for the rest of the week. Every time he glanced at someone, they seemed to be smiling at him. Not warmly, but the way people smile when they know something you don't. He tried to focus on work, but he couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling growing heavier inside him one afternoon. As he was typing on his keyboard, his desk neighbor leaned over and said with a smirk, "Big night coming up, huh?" Arjun froze. He didn't know how to respond. The coworker didn't wait for an answer. He just chuckled and walked away. That brief moment confirmed Arjun's suspicion. Something strange was definitely going on. The night before the gala, Arjun stood in front of his small mirror at home, adjusting the only suit he owned. It was simple, not stylish, but clean and pressed. He stared at himself and took a deep breath. He felt like someone preparing for an exam without knowing the questions. All he knew was that the invitation had turned his ordinary life upside down on the day of the event. He arrived early, hoping to slip in quietly before the others. But the moment he stepped into the luxurious ballroom, the sound of soft laughter reached his ears again. Some people looked at him with surprise, others with amusement. Conversations stopped for a second, then continued as if pretending nothing happened. Arjun felt his throat tighten. He tried to relax, telling himself, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe it's nothing. But his heart didn't agree. His instincts kept warning him that he had been invited for a reason he did not yet understand. Still, he found a quiet corner and waited, holding on to the hope that the night wouldn't be as bad as he feared. But deep down, he felt the air around him buzzing with hidden intentions. And although he didn't know it yet, the night would change everything in ways he couldn't imagine. Arjun's life at the office had always been simple, almost invisible. He came in early, left on time, and spoke only when someone asked him something directly. But behind that quiet personality was a story most people at work never cared to understand. They only remembered one thing about him: the piano incident. A moment that was never meant to be seen, but became the reason people whispered about him for years. It had happened on a slow afternoon almost 2 years ago. Arjun had been working alone in a meeting room, finishing spreadsheets while everyone else attended training sessions. In the corner of that room stood an old upright piano the company had brought during a corporate event. Most employees ignored it, but for Arjun it was like finding a forgotten piece of home. He had grown up playing the piano with his mother, filling their tiny apartment with soft music. After she passed away, touching the keys always brought back her voice, her smile, and the comfort he missed. That afternoon, he couldn't resist. After finishing his tasks, he sat at the piano, gently pressing the keys at first, just soft notes like testing whether the instrument remembered him. The room was empty, silent, warm. Slowly, he began to play a tune his mother used to hum when he was little. His fingers moved with emotion, the sound echoing softly against the walls. He closed his eyes, almost forgetting where he was. What Arjun didn't know was that someone had walked by, heard the music, and peeked inside. Instead of quietly appreciating the moment, they took out their phone and began recording him without permission. Later, that video circulated around the office group chats, not as admiration, but as something amusing. People mocked the seriousness on his face, the way he got lost in the music, and how dramatic he looked while playing. That guy is so weird. Someone said, "He really thinks he's in a movie." Another joke. It didn't take long before the video became a private office meme. They never said it to his face, but whenever he walked into a room, some coworkers would hum a few piano notes under their breath, or make little gestures with their fingers as if playing invisible keys. Arjun noticed. Of course he noticed. But he pretended not to. It was easier to protect himself with silence than to confront people who already believed he was strange. Even though the teasing slowly faded, the reputation stayed. Arjun became the piano guy, and not in a kind or respectful way. More like someone people laughed about when they were bored. No one knew how much that piano meant to him, or how deeply it connected to memories he never talked about. They only saw a moment they didn't understand. So, when Arjun received the unexpected invitation to the annual gala, that old memory came back like a shadow. The whispers in the office only made things worse. People were acting excited, but not in a friendly way. Their smiles felt sharp. Their glances weren't warm. They were curious, like they were waiting for something entertaining to happen. One day, while Arjun was refilling his water bottle in the pantry, he heard two employees talking behind him. "Do you think he knows?" One asked. "No way. He thinks he's actually invited because he's special?" Both of them laughed quietly. Arjun stood still, gripping the bottle tightly. He wanted to turn around and ask what they meant, but his voice stayed locked inside. He simply walked away, pretending he hadn't heard a thing. Another time, while leaving the office, a woman from another team gave him a pitying smile and said, "Good luck at the gala. You might need it." She didn't explain what she meant, and he didn't dare ask. The more he thought about it, the more it felt like he was being led into a situation where people expected him to fail or embarrass himself again, just like the piano incident. It wasn't anger that filled him. It was fear. Fear of being laughed at again. Fear of reliving a moment he still carried in his heart. Arjun was not someone who sought attention, but he was someone who felt things deeply. Every whisper, every smirk, every memory of people laughing behind his back stayed with him longer than it should have. Even the mention of the piano made his chest tighten with a mix of shame and longing. He loved music, yet the fear of being mocked kept him away from the keys ever since the incident. As the gala day approached, the tension inside him grew. His coworkers acted like something big was planned, something they all secretly knew except him. He found himself overthinking every smile, every glance, every conversation cut short when he walked by. It was as if the whole office knew a joke he hadn't been told yet, and he was the joke. But what hurt most wasn't the laughter or the whispers. It was the loneliness. No one tried to understand him. No one asked why he played the piano that day or what the music meant. They saw him as entertainment, not a person. And that belief had followed him all the way to this moment, although Arjun didn't know it yet. Everything he feared was about to collide with something unexpected, something that would change how people saw him, and how he saw himself. Arjun had never seen a place quite like the ballroom where the company gala was being held. The moment he stepped through the grand doors, he felt as if he had entered another world, one filled with warm, golden lights, sparkling chandeliers, elegant decorations, and people dressed in the finest clothes he had ever seen. Everything looked expensive, polished, and far too perfect for someone like him. He stood still near the entrance for a moment, taking a deep breath. His heart was beating faster than usual. The music playing softly in the background, the faint sound of laughter, and the rich scent of perfume filled the air. It all felt unreal. Arjun knew many employees looked forward to this event every year, but for him, it felt more like stepping onto a stage he never asked to be on. As guests continued to arrive, Arjun tried to make himself small, hoping no one would notice him. But that hope didn't last long. A few people nearby turned, spotted him, and whispered behind their hands. Their expressions weren't warm. Some looked surprised, as if they couldn't believe he had actually come. Others looked amused, like they were waiting for something funny to happen. A pair of coworkers from his floor walked past him, both pretending not to stare. But Arjun could see the smirk they tried to hide. "He really came," one of them whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. Another group across the room laughed when they saw him, and one even mimicked pressing piano keys. Making the others chuckle, Arjun felt a small sting in his chest. But he kept his eyes down and walked quietly toward an empty corner. He found a small round table near the wall and sat there, trying not to draw attention. The lights were dimmer there, and he felt shielded from the stares, at least a little. He adjusted his suit jacket nervously. It wasn't new or fancy like everyone else's clothes. It was a simple black suit he had bought years ago for a family wedding. The sleeves were slightly loose, and the fabric didn't shine like the others' expensive outfits. But it was all he had, and he had made sure it was properly ironed before coming. Servers walked around carrying trays of drinks and appetizers. One of them offered Arjun a glass of water with a gentle smile. He thanked her quietly, grateful for the small moment of kindness in the room full of judgment. As he sipped the water, he tried to observe the room the way someone might watch a movie. People were talking loudly, laughing freely, greeting each other with warm hugs and firm handshakes. He felt like a guest in someone else's celebration, a person who didn't quite belong anywhere in the scene. He wondered why he had even come. A part of him wished he could sneak out before anyone else noticed him. But the other part of him, the part that still felt confused about the strange invitation, kept him in his seat. There had to be a reason he was here. It couldn't all be a joke, could it? As time passed, more employees noticed him. Some came close to his corner, pretending to go to the bar, but really just trying to get a better look at him. A few laughed under their breath as they passed. Arjun tried to stay calm, reminding himself that he had done nothing wrong. He was simply attending an event he had been invited to, but every glance, every snicker, every whisper chipped away at him slowly. He felt out of place in a way he hadn't felt since school, where being quiet made him an easy target. The more he sat there, the more he felt the weight of the room pressing down on him. He watched the stage set up in the center of the ballroom. A beautifully polished grand piano stood on one side of it. The instrument looked elegant, shining under the warm lights. The sight of it made Arjun's chest tighten. It reminded him of the old video, the one people had used to laugh at him. The memory still stung, even after so many years. He forced himself to look away. Minutes felt like hours. Every passing moment increased his anxiety. He kept adjusting his sleeves, rubbing his hands together, or tapping his foot lightly under the table. Anything to release the nervous energy building inside him. When the lights dimmed slightly, signaling the start of the event, Arjun hoped that the speeches and performances would distract people from noticing him. Maybe once the program began, everyone would forget he was even there. But as the announcer introduced the first speaker, Arjun realized something unsettling. He wasn't simply attending a gala. He was at the center of a silent attention. He did not want. The atmosphere around him felt tense in a way he could not fully understand. People kept glancing at him as though waiting, expecting something. It was as if the entire room knew a secret he wasn't aware of, a secret that had something to do with him. Arjun shifted in his seat, his heartbeat rising again. He didn't know why he had been invited, but one thing was clear: whatever was coming next. He could feel it approaching. And he wasn't sure he was ready for it. The moment the CEO entered the ballroom, the entire atmosphere changed. Conversation slowed, laughter softened, and people quickly returned to their seats as if a silent command had passed through the room. Arjun watched the shift with quiet amazement. It was the kind of respect and authority he could never imagine having. The CEO, Ms. Kavya Sharma, walked confidently across the stage. She carried herself with calm power, the kind that didn't need to be shouted or shown off. Her presence alone was enough to make everyone pay attention. Arjun had only seen her from a distance in office posters or company newsletters, but seeing her in person felt different. She had an aura that made it impossible to look away. She greeted the crowd warmly, thanking everyone for attending. Her voice was steady but friendly, filled with the kind of confidence that came naturally to her. As she spoke about the growth of the company, the achievements of the year, and the hard work of the employees, the audience listened attentively. Claps followed every milestone she mentioned. Arjun tried to blend into the background, hoping she wouldn't notice him at all. He kept his eyes low, focusing on the pattern of the carpet, the rim of his glass, anything to avoid the unsettling feeling that something unexpected was coming. But then something strange happened. While mentioning different teams and their contributions, the CEO's eyes moved across the room. She scanned each table thoughtfully, acknowledging employees with nods and smiles. People straightened up when her gaze passed over them. Hoping to be recognized, Arjun watched silently, thinking she would never look in his direction, but she did. Her eyes paused on him for a moment, longer than they did on anyone else. It wasn't an accidental glance. It was intentional, almost searching. Arjun felt his breath catch. Why was she looking at him? Did she even know who he was? A few people around him noticed her gaze too. Some raised their eyebrows. Others covered their mouths to hide their smiles. Arjun felt their eyes on him more strongly than the CEO's, and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. As Ms. Kavya continued speaking, she began talking about talent in unexpected places. How every person in a company could bring something special if given a chance. Her words were warm, but they made Arjun feel uneasy, as if she was talking about him without saying his name. Then, in the middle of her speech, she turned toward the grand piano on the stage. The golden spotlight made the glossy instrument shine as if waiting for someone to touch it. The room grew quieter. A few people leaned forward in anticipation. The CEO smiled gently and said, "Tonight I want to share something with all of you. Something I came across by chance. Something that moved me more than I expected." Arjun felt a cold wave rush through his body. He sat frozen, unable to blink. The CEO continued, "A while ago I received a recording of one of our employees. Someone who played the piano with such emotion that it left a lasting impression on me." Gasps and whispers filled the hall. Heads turned. People didn't bother hiding their reactions anymore. Arjun's heart dropped into his stomach. He knew exactly which recording she was talking about, the one that had been passed around the office. The one people mocked. The moment he never wanted to relive. The CEO raised her hand, silencing the murmurs. "You may have seen the video too, but perhaps not the way I saw it. To me, it wasn't funny or strange. It was raw emotion. Pure talent. Something rare." Arjun's breath grew shallow. His hands shook on his lap. He wished he could disappear. The entire room turned toward him at the same time, not subtly, not slowly. Everyone looked at him. It was like being hit by a spotlight, even though no light pointed his way. He felt exposed, vulnerable, as if every wall he had built around himself was falling apart. Some people whispered, "It's him. Is she really talking about him?" Oh wow, this is going to be something. The CEO continued speaking, but Arjun could barely hear anything over the pounding in his ears. Her words floated toward him like echoes from underwater. I believe talent should never be hidden, she said. And even more, it should never be mocked. Several people looked down in embarrassment. Others suddenly looked away from Arjun, the same people who had laughed at him for years. He felt their guilt in the silence. Then the CEO said something that made the entire hall gasp. I would like to invite that employee to play for us tonight. Arjun's world stopped. People turned to him again, eyes wide, some amused, some shocked, some worried. A couple of coworkers whispered, "No way." Under their breath, his stomach twisted. His palms went cold. His heart trembled. This was the moment he had been afraid of, the moment he had sensed from the beginning, the reason they invited him. But it wasn't what he thought. He expected humiliation. Instead, he found himself standing at the edge of something he didn't understand, something that might just change everything. Yet, as the CEO's words settled, Arjun didn't know whether to stand up or run away. Arjun sat frozen in his chair as the CEO's words echoed through the ballroom. It felt like every sound in the room had disappeared except the pounding of his own heartbeat. People were staring at him so openly that he didn't know where to look. Some had eyes wide with disbelief. Some were hiding smiles. Others simply watched him with curiosity, waiting to see what he would do. He wanted to move. He wanted to breathe. But his body refused to listen. The CEO stood on the stage, smiling warmly, not mockingly, not sarcastically, but with real encouragement. "Please," she said gently, "if you feel comfortable, join us." Her tone was calm and respectful, but Arjun still felt like 1,000 spotlights were pointed at him. He swallowed hard, trying to gather strength. His hands were shaking. His legs felt heavy. For a moment, he wondered if he should just stay seated. Maybe if he didn't stand up, people would stop staring? Maybe the moment would pass, but it didn't. Instead, the silence grew deeper. Like the whole room was holding its breath. Someone behind him whispered, "Come on, just do it." Another person muttered, "Let's see this." A few employees snickered quietly. Their reactions made his chest tighten. The old fear crept in, the fear of being laughed at, judged, or humiliated again. He thought about the video, the whispers, the pitying looks. He didn't want to relive that, but then he looked at the CEO again. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't smirking. Her eyes held respect, something he wasn't used to receiving. And in her expression, Arjun saw something he hadn't felt in a long time. A chance to show who he really was. A chance to take back the part of himself he had hidden for years. A chance to stand up for the boy who once played the piano for his mother with all his heart. His breath trembled, but slowly he placed his hands on the table and pushed himself up. The chair legs scraped softly against the floor. A small sound that somehow felt incredibly loud in the quiet room. People turned more sharply toward him. Some leaned forward. Some smirked. Some looked genuinely surprised. Arjun didn't look at any of them. He kept his eyes low, staring at his shoes as he took his first step. It felt like walking through water, slow, heavy, unfamiliar. Every step made him more aware of how many eyes followed him. His mind raced with all kinds of thoughts. What if I mess up? What if they laugh again? What if I disappoint the CEO? What if this is another joke? But underneath all that fear was a tiny spark, the memory of his mother's voice telling him, "Music is your truth." Arjun, never be afraid of it. He kept walking. The piano stood near the center of the stage like a silent witness waiting for him. Its glossy surface reflected the warm lights above, giving it a glow almost angelic. As he approached, he felt the familiar pull in his chest, the same feeling he used to get when he played as a child. He reached the steps leading to the stage. For a moment he hesitated. He felt small in front of the crowd, insignificant compared to the grandness of the event. But then he took a slow breath and climbed the steps one at a time. The CEO stepped aside, giving him space. She didn't say anything, but her calm expression told him everything he needed to know. "You are safe here." Arjun stood beside the piano. He gently touched the edge of the instrument with his fingertips. Even that tiny contact brought back memories, the sound of his mother humming softly beside him, the feel of the old wooden piano in their living room, the peaceful evenings filled with melodies instead of noise. He took another deep breath and slowly sat on the bench. His hands trembled. He placed them in his lap, trying to steady himself. The crowd was completely silent now, waiting. For a moment, he closed his eyes. He didn't think about the people. He didn't think about the video. He didn't think about the whispers or the jokes. He thought about the one thing that always brought him comfort, the music that lived quietly inside him. When he opened his eyes, he lifted his hands and placed his fingers gently on the keys. They felt cool and smooth, like greeting old friends he had abandoned. He pressed the first note. A soft, warm sound filled the air, then another note. Then another. The music began to flow, hesitant at first, then slowly growing steadier. The hall remained silent. No laughter. No whispers. Nothing but the smooth rise and fall of the melody. Arjun played the tune his mother taught him, the one that always made him feel safe, seen and understood. As he played, his shoulders relaxed. His breathing steadied. His world narrowed down to the piano and the melody. He poured his heart into every note, letting the emotions he had held for years finally escape. People watched him, stunned. Some leaned forward, mesmerized. Some blinked rapidly, surprised by the depth in his music. A few even wiped away tears. They didn't expect to shed. Arjun didn't see any of them. He was somewhere else, a place filled with memories, emotion, and the quiet truth he had silenced for too long. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a joke. He felt like himself. As Arjun played, something unusual began happening in the room, something even he didn't feel at first. The music changed the air around him. The soft notes that started out shaky grew warmer, fuller, steadier, like his heart had finally remembered its strength. Each key he pressed told a story of pain, hope, loneliness, and quiet courage. The ballroom, once filled with laughter and whispers, became silent in the truest sense. Not the silence of boredom, the silence of being deeply moved. People stopped talking. People stopped eating. Some even stopped breathing for a moment. It was as if the whole room was wrapped in the same melody Arjun poured from his heart. His fingers danced gently on the piano. Not perfectly, not with the skill of a trained performer, but with something far more powerful: sincerity. The kind of sincerity people rarely saw or felt in their busy lives. A soft gasp escaped someone's mouth. A quiet sniff came from another corner. Even the waiters paused, trays halfway lifted, listening without realizing they had stopped working. Arjun didn't see any of this. He was lost in the world of his music. With every chord he felt himself open up more, letting memories guide him. He remembered sitting beside his mother, following her hands as she played. He remembered how she would smile whenever he hit the right key, and how she would laugh softly whenever he made a mistake. He remembered the comfort of her presence, the comfort he never found again after she passed away. The melody he played wasn't fancy or complicated. It was simple, like a conversation between him and his past. But somehow, that simplicity touched everyone in the room more deeply than any grand performance could. As he reached the middle of the piece, a soft breeze of emotion washed through him. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of everything he felt. For years he had buried this part of himself, afraid of judgment. But now, here in front of hundreds of people, he felt something he had forgotten. Freedom. Slowly, he lifted his head. He finally saw the audience, and what he saw shocked him. No one was laughing. Not a single person smirked or whispered. Instead, faces were soft. Eyes were wet. Expressions were full of surprise, admiration, even guilt. A woman in the front wiped tears from her cheeks. A man who often joked about him sat completely still, his eyes fixed on Arjun with disbelief. Groups that once whispered about him now watched like they were seeing him for the first time. Arjun felt his heartbeat shift, not from fear anymore, but from something warm, something rising inside him. He kept playing. Each note grew richer, bolder. Each movement of his fingers carried a new confidence. He was no longer the awkward office boy people mocked. He was a storyteller. A musician. A soul who had finally found the courage to speak in the only language he truly understood. The CEO stood near the stage, her eyes shining with pride. She wasn't watching the keys or the technique. She was watching Arjun, watching the transformation happening right in front of her. She saw what no one else had cared to see, a hidden talent, a gentle heart, a quiet brilliance waiting to be uncovered. When Arjun reached the final few notes, the room seemed to lean closer as if they didn't want it to end. He pressed the last key gently, letting the sound fade slowly into the golden silence of the ballroom. For a moment after the final note, no one moved. The silence was deep, the kind of silence that comes only after something truly meaningful, and then applause exploded, not polite applause, not the kind people give just to be nice. It was loud, powerful, emotional. People stood up from their seats, all at once, giving him a standing ovation. Claps echoed against the high ceilings. Some guests whistled, some cheered. Others simply clapped with both hands pressed to their chest, as if thanking him for the feeling he had given them. Arjun sat frozen, overwhelmed. His eyes widened at the crowd standing for him. For him, the same person they once mocked. A few coworkers who had laughed at him earlier clapped the hardest now, their faces red with shame and amazement. Some even looked like they wanted to apologize right there. Arjun blinked rapidly, tears forming in his eyes. It didn't feel real. It felt like a dream he never allowed himself to have. The CEO stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "That," she said softly, "was beautiful." Her words broke the last piece of fear inside him. He finally allowed himself to breathe, really breathe, as the applause washed over him like warm waves. Applause washed over him like warm waves. For the first time in a long time, he felt seen. Not as a joke, not as an outsider, and as he sat on that stage, surrounded by applause and light, Arjun realized something quietly powerful. This night was not the humiliation he feared. It was the beginning of something entirely new. The applause slowly softened, but the warmth in the room didn't fade. Arjun still sat on the piano bench, trying to understand what had just happened. A few minutes ago, he had walked to the stage trembling with fear, certain he would be humiliated. Now, he was surrounded by admiration he never expected to receive in his entire life. As the clapping settled, the CEO leaned closer and whispered, "Take your time. You earned this moment." Her voice was gentle, sincere. For someone in her position to speak to him like that made Arjun feel something he couldn't describe. A mix of pride, relief, and disbelief. He finally stood up from the bench. His legs were wobbly, but not from fear anymore, from the weight of the emotions running through him. He took a small step back and turned toward the audience. Dozens of eyes looked back at him, but they weren't sharp or mocking. They were soft, grateful, even apologetic. Some people nodded at him as though silently saying, "We were wrong about you." Others smiled with genuine appreciation. A woman from HR stepped forward near the stage and said, "That was incredible," wiping a tear from her cheek. Another man from finance clapped slowly and said under his breath, "I never knew." He looked embarrassed but also moved. Arjun didn't know how to react. Compliments were not something he was used to receiving, definitely not from so many people at once. He lowered his head slightly as if bowing, but his voice trembled too much for him to speak. The CEO returned to the microphone. "This," she said, gesturing toward Arjun, "is why we must never underestimate anyone. Talent can come from anywhere, even from someone we haven't taken the time to know." Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Understanding exactly what she meant, she continued, "Music like this doesn't just fill a room, it fills hearts. And tonight, it has reminded us of the beauty we often forget to look for." The crowd clapped again, softer but more emotional. Arjun felt heat rise behind his eyes. He blinked rapidly to stop the tears, but one still escaped, sliding quietly down his cheek. As he stepped off the stage, something unexpected happened. People moved toward him, not out of curiosity or mockery, but with sincerity. Colleagues who used to ignore him suddenly wanted to shake his hand. Some wanted to congratulate him. Others simply wanted to say thank you. A man from development approached first. "I I didn't know you could play like that, he said, scratching the back of his head awkwardly. I'm sorry if, we ever made you uncomfortable. Arjun nodded, though he didn't trust his voice yet. Next came a group of women from the marketing team. We've seen that old video, one of them admitted, looking ashamed. We didn't realize how talented you really were. Another added softly, I'm sorry for laughing. Truly. Arjun managed a small smile. He wasn't angry, just overwhelmed. More people came, each offering kind words. The same co-workers who once smirked at him now looked at him with admiration and guilt. They apologized, congratulated him, or simply stood silently, not sure how to express what they felt. For the first time, Arjun didn't feel invisible. For the first time, he didn't feel like just the quiet guy. Tonight, he had given the room something deeper than music, a lesson. As he tried to step away for some air, someone gently stopped him. It was Mikal, the co-worker who had smirked at him the most over the years. The one who often told jokes behind his back. The one who once hummed piano notes whenever Arjun walked by. But now, Mikal looked different. His face wasn't smug. It was heavy with guilt. Hey, Arjun, he began, clearing his throat awkwardly. I wanted to say something. Arjun waited silently. Mikal looked down at the floor before meeting his eyes again. I was wrong. We all were. The video, the jokes, we didn't understand what it meant to you. His voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry. Arjun didn't know what to say. His heart softened. He simply nodded, and somehow that small gesture was enough to make Mikal exhale in relief. As Arjun moved toward the side of the ballroom, someone offered him a glass of water. Another gave him a small pat on the back. He felt like he was floating, like the world around him had changed shape. But the most surprising moment came when the CEO herself approached him. She smiled warmly. Walk with me for a moment. Arjun nodded nervously. She led him to a quieter area of the hall, away from the crowd. Do you know why I invited you tonight? She asked. Arjun hesitated. Because of the video? In part, she said. But not for the reason others thought? She paused, studying his expression. When I watched it, I didn't see something funny. I saw passion, depth, emotion. You played like someone who feels deeply, someone who understands the heart of music. Arjun's throat tightened. I wanted the company to see that too, she continued. To see you. No one had ever spoken to him like that. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You may think you're invisible, Arjun, but people like you change the world quietly. He felt tears rise again, but he held them back. And she added, I have something important to ask you, but we'll talk after the event. Her words left him stunned, curious, and slightly nervous. But this time, the nervousness came with excitement. She walked away with a smile, leaving Arjun standing there breathless, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't just part of the evening, he was the reason the evening would be remembered. Arjun stood in the quiet corner of the ballroom long after the applause had faded and the music had shifted to soft background tunes. His hands were still trembling a little, not from fear, but from the unbelievable moment he had just lived through. He had walked into the gala expecting humiliation, and instead he walked into a new chapter of his life. People still approached him occasionally, offering warm smiles, quick compliments, or small gestures of appreciation. But now the crowd had relaxed. Conversations returned. Laughter filled the room again, but this time none of it was directed at him. The strange, tense energy that surrounded him at the beginning of the evening had completely disappeared. Slowly, he stepped away from the noise, trying to take a moment for himself. His heart was full, overflowing with emotions he didn't quite know how to contain. Pride, relief, gratitude. Little disbelief too. He found a balcony overlooking the city. Cool night air brushed against his face, calming him. The city lights sparkled like tiny stars scattered across the ground. Arjun closed his eyes and breathed deeply, letting the fresh air settle everything inside him. Beautiful night, isn't it? A gentle voice said from behind. Arjun turned to find the CEO approaching him again. Her presence felt quiet, grounded, and somehow comforting. He straightened up instinctively, unsure how to behave around someone of her status. "You did wonderfully," she said, smiling. "Thank you," Arjun replied softly. His voice shy but sincere. She stepped beside him, her eyes on the city. "You know, I've been attending this gala for years. Every year feels the same. Fancy speeches, fancy clothes, fancy food." She chuckled softly. But tonight was different. Tonight had emotion. Arjun looked down, feeling shy again. "I didn't think anyone would take it seriously." "That," she said gently, "is the problem. We look at people from the outside and assume we know everything. But the truth is, we rarely know anyone at all." Her words settled deep inside him. After a short pause, she continued, "I wanted to talk to you about something important. I didn't want to bring it up when everyone was around." Arjun's breath caught. "Something important?" "Yes," she turned to him fully now. "We've been planning to start a new internal initiative, something that brings creativity and humanity into the workplace. Music, art, storytelling. A space where employees can express themselves, not just work like machines." Arjun blinked, surprised. "That sounds wonderful." "It is," she said. "But we need someone to lead the project. Someone who understands expression. Someone genuine." She paused for a moment, then asked gently, "Would you consider being that person?" The words hit Arjun like a wave of light. "Me?" he whispered, almost disbelieving. "You want me?" The CEO nodded with a smile. "Yes, Arjun, I think you're perfect for it." His chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with a warmth he had never felt before. For so long he had believed he was invisible. Someone forgettable. Someone people laughed at behind his back. Someone people laughed at behind his back. But now he was being offered an opportunity because of who he truly was, not because of his job title, not because of office politics, but because of his heart. I don't know what to say," he whispered. "You don't have to say anything right now," she replied. "Just think about it. And know this, you've earned this chance. Not by trying to please people, not by pretending, but by being yourself." Arjun felt tears forming again, but he didn't hide them this time. He let them fall silently. The CEO offered a soft, encouraging smile before walking back inside, leaving him alone with the night sky and the new possibilities stretching in front of him. A few minutes later, as he re-entered the ballroom, people greeted him like he was part of them, not someone to mock, not someone to ignore. Someone who mattered. His colleagues who once laughed now stepped aside respectfully as he passed. A few even nodded at him, their faces filled with a quiet apology they couldn't put into words. But the biggest change wasn't in them. It was in him. He no longer felt small. He no longer felt out of place. He no longer felt like he had to hide his true self. As the event neared its end, Arjun looked once more at the piano sitting on the stage. This time it didn't bring fear. It brought comfort. It felt like an old friend, one he had finally reunited with. He walked toward it and placed his hand gently on its smooth surface, whispering under his breath, "Thank you, Mom," he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Before leaving, the CEO walked past him and said softly, "I'm glad you played tonight." Arjun answered with newfound confidence, "I'm glad I did too." As he stepped out of the ballroom and into the cool night, he felt lighter than he ever had. The darkness outside didn't feel scary. It felt open, full of paths waiting for him. He had come to the gala expecting to be a joke, but he walked away from it as the heart of the night. As someone seen, respected, and valued, and deep inside, Arjun knew this was not the end. It was the beginning of the life he always deserved.